Thank you. Ciao. Hello, everyone. I'm Esther. I'm a web developer at Torchbox. Torchbox, those who don't know, is a digital agency specializing in creating a website, web application, or digital marketing strategy. And we have also created a very, very handy CMS for Django called Wagtail. But I am also one of the organizers of PyCon Italia and one of the Strawberry GraphQL core dev. So today I want to talk about a little story. So early this year, I was in Florence to meet one of my best friends, Sabrina, and we went in a bookshop, and she suggested me a very interesting reading, Invisible Woman, Explore Data Bias in a World Designed for Men, written by Calorin Perez. It's a very interesting reading. Talks about how gender bias affects the use of data in many areas like healthcare, education, public policy, etc. So, yeah, spoiler, we have a long way to go to fix gender gap. But today, I don't want to talk about this book itself, but about a particular chapter, chapter 4, that focuses specifically on the tech industry, so our industry. And I was particularly shocked to know that during the 40s and the 50s, women, no men, were the dominant sex in programming, so the opposite of what we have today. And of course, like many of you, I think I have seen this picture of women working with big computer, old picture, black and white, with many cable and stuff, but I never realized how many of them, they were the majority. And so they were the majority so much that there were articles encouraging women into programming in like magazine like Cosmopolitan, so a typical feminine magazine. And this to me seems images from another world, another era. How is even possible? How did we get from this situation to what we have today, that we are struggling to fix gender gaps and increasing women participation in tech? So yeah, let's dive in some historical reason. So during the Second War, men were called to arms, so many women work in technical roles, including operating early computer like ENIAC in the US and Colossus in the UK. So those experiences paved the way for women to continue to work in technical field also after the war. And the second point is that the perception of programming was different. In the early days of computing, programming was seen like a less prestigious than hardware engineering, because hardware was more considered more challenging, so masculine only. And instead, programming was compared to clerical work, so like typing, filling, those traditional, more female-dominated field. So this perception made it possible for women to enter in this field. And yeah, so there was already a gender bias here that led to underestimate the complexity of women work. So the term programming was not yet mainstream, so there were many assumptions around that. And in fact, one of the women that work at ENIAC, Ruth Licherman, is in an interview is trying to clarify it, what is programming. So the interviewing is asking her a question and assuming that, yeah, programming is easy, what he thought was just plug and play. And Ruth he correct him, no, it actually involves more than that. It involves take the problem, split into pieces, take pen and paper, start to do diagrams. And actually, sometimes there were women specifying in a part of the software because it was too big. And only after all this process, they went to the machine and start to programming, or in this case, plug in the cables. So yeah, that sounded familiar to me, but yeah, don't know actually why. So we have to consider that there were no programming languages at the time, no operating system, no best practice, forgot solid principles, design pattern. So every programming technique must be worked out for the first time. And those women at ENIAC made a lot of innovation in programming methods. For example, Betty Hoberton invented a special technique that involves stop the machine in the middle of the process and look at the partial result. So I think we call now breakpoints. So yeah, thank to her the next time you are debugging your application. So thank Betty for this one. But yeah, going back to our story, what happened next? So the computer became commercial starting from the 50s, because before was only used for scientific studies or government programs. But at the end of the decade, computer became mainstream, and companies like IBM start to sell them massively. So any company wanted to buy one and start to build his custom software. So they will start looking for skilled programmers and quickly to develop their software. And good programmers were hard to find because no one knew how to program yet. So yeah, that's when the first software crisis was declared. So the industry started to use some aptitude tests and personality profiles to rank the candidates, the potential programmers, because nobody knows how to program yet, so it was a brand new thing. So the company has to find out the potentially good employees and train them after. So it was a huge, huge investment. So they start looking to only those skills and characteristics that can lead to be successful in programming. So the underlying assumption here was there were some innate qualities that can be linked to a good programming performance. So this test aimed to evaluate specific skills like verbal meaning, reasoning with mathematical trivia, logic puzzle, identify synonyms, or other qualities like emotional stabilities and stuff like that. The picture is actually an example of one of the IBM aptitude tests. So they were already criticized. They were already making jokes of that because study proved that there was no significant correlation between a good test and the subsequent job performance. So yeah, but they continue to use that. So what came out is some beliefs. So for example, with stuff like the relationship between programming and musical ability. Or, yeah, that programming enjoy their work, dislike routine, and they were particularly interested in puzzle-solving activities. They disinterest people. Programmer dislike like close interaction, so they prefer to work rather than people. Yeah, so those personality profile formalize the programmer stereotype that we all know. A male, typically wearing a hoodie, always wearing a hoodie, that spend all of this time behind the computer, which may not leave much time for socializing. Unfortunately, this stereotype discourages women from pursuing programming careers, and they feel that you must be obsessed with computer to be succeed in programming. So, yeah, all of this from like 1991, the woman participation in the tech industry and start to decrease. So both in occupation and in computer science. Plus, males usually have more experience in computer because they tend to have one at home. So, and of course, they were using all the time to play and stuff. So, which gave them the privilege in classes because as a result, they were more confident and women were, this thing emphasized the stereotype that women were less capable of programming, basically. So stereotypes and bias continue to affect the tech industry today and leading to lack of diversity and inclusion in the tech teams. So addressing those bias and interrupting them is crucial to create a more inclusive industry. And yeah, there are several factors that contribute to gender bias. Unconscious bias, so from when we are young, we get our culturally based mental models that help us to drive the world, but they also lead us to unconscious bias and causing us to miss some strength, some talent or characteristic in people who doesn't fit our notion of what is a good leader, a good technical person. And yeah, these biases are naturally for human psychology and we all have them in some degrees. The important thing is to recognize them and take action to interrupt it. So it's not about blaming individuals or groups, just focus on identify them and work together to to create a more inclusive environment. Gender stereotype, for example, when women may be characterized are too aggressive, while the same behavior is acceptable for men. And these bias influence hiring and promotion decisions, so resulting in disparity in compensation. Is estimated that women globally are paid about 20% less than men. So this data getting worse if you're speaking of women of color. So this means that women are working for free 2 months a year. And yeah, also gender bias create an hostile environment, make it difficult for women to pursue their career. We have to think about also the gender bias in our algorithm. For example, some years ago, a study found out that LinkedIn was suggesting more male candidates than female candidates. So they later hired a diversity team to fix this problem, but it still has it in some ways. And plus, these algorithms are not open source, so we rely only on some independent studies. And lately, these big companies start to lay off many teams and employees. So I hope that this will not be the case, but maybe also the diversity team will be reduced, and hopefully not, but the consequence we'll know only in the years in the future. So, yeah. Another study found out that when company and in their core values emphasize meritocracy, at men will offer more higher bonuses, and more respect women. So this is because the meritocratic system, the evaluation of performance is often based on subjective judgment and assumptions, which can be influenced by gender bias. So this study highlights the importance of being aware of the unintentional consequences of meritocracies and create a truly equitable and objective evaluation process. So the consequences. Recent here, we know that there was a gender bias in some software. For example, in the recognizing of the face. For example, when you go to the airport and you scan your passport, the software is failing when the person is a person of color more than the other, because the software is not trained enough to recognize all the people. And the same is for this technology, like trackers that are more efficient for men than women. So this lack of diversity in tech industry has led to lack of perspective and problem solving, which can lead to less innovation, less creativity in the tech industry. We now want to understand why it's important to fix these issues. So, because these biases are natural, I will say, and it's important to recognize and stop them. Why does it matter? Because inclusion is not a nice to have, it's a priority, it's a must. The company profitability will benefit from investing in diversity team, and brings innovation, will help to understand better the client from a different perspective. And yeah, we need to fix just because it's more profitable, but just because discriminating people is wrong, and yeah, it's not fair. I want to show an example here of this brilliant mathematician called Diana Tamila, who helped to solve a problem, the hyperbolic plane. For centuries, we were not able to represent it. And he helped the mathematician to solve this problem. It's a very good example that shows how the innovation comes from different skills, like combining different skills and disciplines. So, as an organization, what we should do to actually practical fix this problem? Let's find out some hints, let's call it this. So, from the job description, the words that we use that are considered more masculine, women tend to think about more men work here, and they find the job less appealing. So develop a job advertisement guidelines that, for example, that use more masculine words like competitive, asserting, ambitious. We should change them in order to appeal more women. We have to know that research has shown that women apply for a job if they don't apply for a job if they don't reach 100% the qualification. So we should think about revising our job description, and rather than have a nice to have that may disencourage the qualified woman. And here there is a really nice reel, very short, hope the audio work, that show this problem.
5 years experience with Excel. I only have 4 years and 3 months.
Well, I heard of Excel 10 years ago, so that's basically 10 years experience.
Attention to detail. I did make a typo last year.
I always know when my mom moves my stuff.
Great communicator. I've been working on my communication issues in therapy.
Yeah, I talk good.
Works well with others. They're gonna find out I had a friendship ruined over a project in 5th grade.
Others love me.
Startup environment. Ugh, I hate playing ping pong.
Startups, no HR.
Okay. The hiring process, start giving hiring managers blind resume so they can focus only on the skills and qualification, and track if these practices are changing the hiring number. And build think about the interview process. So develop a set of questions that you ask to all the candidates, so to help ensure fairness and consistency. And last but not least, provide unconscious bias training to the manager and hiring managers. Encourage education to young women and emphasize that there is not only one way to be interested in computer science, so the hacker boy icon, but you don't have to be a subs to be good at it. And representation, so our role model and mentor play a crucial role inspiring and guiding people in their career. And this is I will encourage you to watch a keynote talk from PyCon Italia last week. The streaming is already online, and here there is the link. The power of the presentation if you want to go deeper in this topic. Mentorship programs are a beautiful example about how to increase women participation in tech, finding new talents. For example, in Torchbox, we have the Academy, but there are other programs like Google Summer of Code. So, yeah, people without having a real experience in programming can learn or switch careers. That are some of the resources that I find interesting. I will share the slide so you can. And yeah, that was actually it.
Well, thank you, Esther. I know some of us in the room try hard to hold their tears down listening to talk. Really, we need to talk more and more and more and more about gender gap.
Okay.
I have a question about, so I've been with the same company for 10 years. The IT department is kind of, very much the stereotype of the nerdy guys in the hoodies. And recently our team has grown quite a bit. The organization as a whole is very diverse, but I'm wondering what kind of things, like as a technical team lead, I can do to, support a more diverse and welcoming environment.
Starting hiring more women is a big step. Ensure that there is not just one woman in the room, and also surveys about how their participation and how they feel in the team. So listen to them can be a good step. Ensure that there are no issue in the company, and find a way to report if they are anonymously. This is a good thing. I think feedback is a very good way to turn the company culture. So
I have one question myself. So, no, it's not hard for you. Maybe more difficult to answer from this part of the room. Okay. What do you think about the diversity in our communities, like Python contributors, Django contributors, DSF, or like other small communities, and maybe any ideas, suggestions, what we should be doing?
I think we are making some progress recently, and we are looking in the problem, and we start to see some results, and women participation is slightly improving in the last year, I think. The next step, I think, will be having more women or diversity of any kind in the leadership. That is, I think, is still low in the representation of the company in the boards.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much for your talk. My question is, how would you help a woman in tech, say a woman of color, overcome the barrier of fearing to put yourself out there? Like you said, women don't apply when they don't meet 100% of the requirements. So what advice would you give them?
To the company, I will give the advice to put effort in their job description to encourage women, for example, having a specific test that encourage them. And yeah, to women is a bit hard. I think it depends on the person, and it's kind of hard issue. We should be more brave in general. And recognize we always underestimate us. I do. So try to work on this bit is a really good first step. And participate to like workshop and sprint. I think is a good way to be to feel like more. Competent, I guess, and confident. This is the word.
I think we have time for more questions. Yeah, please.
Yes, thank you for the great talk and like for bringing up these issues. Some studies, like a famous Uber study, show that differences are sometimes caused not by biases of the companies, but by the general world and how it treats women differently, and how things are generally in the world harder for women sometimes. Do you think companies should try to compensate for that using affirmative action and that kind of policies?
Yeah, company, especially big company, has the power for change a bit the world, so they should invest more in changing our mentality. Yeah, I think so. They have the power to do that, and once we start to think in a different way, then we will become more normal.
Esther, thank you. Do you have any practical tips for trying to recognize your own unconscious biases?
I think I'm working on it.
Not yours, but mine. How do...
Okay. I'm thinking. It's kind of hard. I think receiving ask for feedback because it's hard to recognize my own bias. So I think you have to ask some opinions about other people, about how they feel, how did I perform? Not me, but in general.
One last question.
There is one.
Okay, a quick one, please.
Very quick. Great talk, thank you. Just a question more on the educational point of view. Do you believe that we encourage females from a younger age at schools enough to step into technology?
I think we can do more. I think we can do more because from the young age, we still have this kind of difference between boy toys and female boys, and so usually still the issue that to girls we given a nice kitchen, to boys we need the chemical thing. So this is something, if we teach them from a very young age, they will be more confident and to go to the school, to STEM education and computer science than when they are not adult but teenager.
Well, thank you, Esther. Not only you gave a great talk, but also tried to be the answer of some of the difficult questions which we should be looking for answers all together. But yeah, thank you.